Welcome to Blind Shovel, an arts and music podcast. Today I had the pleasure of speaking with illustrator Matthew Forsythe. Enjoy.
Matthew Forsythe, 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 Matthew Forsythe.
Hello.
Hey, Michael.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. So you're out in LA?
I'm in LA, yeah.
How long has that been?
This time I've only been here about 6 months this time. I used to live here about 8 years ago.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
What occurred in between those two time periods?
Well, I was working for Cartoon Network, and so when I left that job, I'm Canadian, so when I left that job, my visa also left, and I went back to book work. So I went back to Montreal and worked on my books for a few years. I have kind of a cold, so I'm kind of congested.
It's no problem.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that's how I came across the work, is Pokko. Or I don't know if you pronounce it Pokko.
Yeah, that's how I pronounce it. Mm-hmm.
How did you get into kids' books? Do you have children?
I don't have kids. I was making comics, and I'd always wanted to make picture books, but yeah, didn't really know how to get into it. And then I was contacted by a Canadian publisher about illustrating a book, and I did a book with a Canadian publisher, and it did really well. It was like a New York Times notable book, and then that was an entree into like New York publishers. And I've been working with Simon & Schuster ever since, with the same publisher, Paula Wiseman.
Nice.
Ever since, yeah, and she's wonderful. So we have a great ongoing relationship.
How do you know when you have an idea for a kid's book? Like an idea that would appeal to that medium and audience?
Yeah, good question. I think I'm writing right now, and it's very difficult.
Because I know you make comics as well, right?
Yeah. I haven't made comics in a long time. I'm really into the picture book format. I'm really focusing on the challenges of the picture book format and the opportunities, like the art of it, and because I love painting, and I love the sort of like the energy of a picture book when it's done right. So it's so exciting for me. So yeah, the picture book idea thing is very difficult to know when something is clicking or not. I think it's something that you have to for me, I have to dig into and find different layers of. I think there has to be some kind of emotional resonance, some kind of emotional seed, in my own life. It can't just be a funny idea. It has to have some kind of link to my own experience, for me. And then, yeah, I just try and dig in and find layers of humor and drama and color and art, and hopefully, one never knows what's going to resonate with other people, but definitely just trying to find something that I'm excited by. That's always been my metric. Like if it's exciting to illustrate something, that's all I can. Yeah. That's all we can hope for.
Do you show it to children beforehand, like before publishing? Like, typically if I'm drawing a book, I'd probably show it to my peers and see what they think. I've never made a kid's book, but I'm considering making some strange form of them. And, there's this kind of arrogance, honestly, when I look at certain kids' books, and I'm like, I feel like I can make that in 3 days. It's, 15 pages, there's 7 drawings, the text is about half a page long. And I know it's not that simple. But yeah, I'm very curious. Like, do you show it to children first before publishing it? How do you go about refining a kid's book?
Well, first of all, I think picture books I think they're like every market, like there's a lot of stuff in every market, if it's TV or film or comics, that is just being churned out for the market machine. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of depth or, layered thinking or, there's not a deep philosophy behind the books, and that's fine. That's just part of the market we live in, But I think there is a stratum of picture books that are really timeless, and they are layered and they are deep, and you can grow old with them. So it depends on how you look at the market. It's like TV. There's TV shows that will resonate for decades. And there's TV shows that are made just to be entertaining this week. It's like every art market. Yeah. Yeah. So sorry, what was your second question?
Yeah, I asked too many questions and expressed too many sentiments within that. Mostly because I'm just excited by the idea. And I do like Mina. I'm assuming I'm pronouncing that right. Mm-hmm. I think that reflects a deeper complexity than Pokko for me upon reading it. Okay. For several reasons we can get into. But I think what I was asking is, in the practical sense, do you run the books by children and gauge their reaction before publishing them?
Yeah, I do. I don't personally do it, but a lot of my friends who I trust are parents, like writer friends, and I will definitely ask them to read it to their kids and see if there's any notes that the kids have. If the kids are trailing off or bored by anything, that is a huge flag. Like if the kids are not interested in a part, then that just means it's not working. That's important, but ultimately, ultimately we know if something's boring, if you're reading your work, when something's working, or when you also know subconsciously, at least, when you're taking shortcuts, and we all do. And sometimes I think that's what I think a lot of writers groups are for. Writers groups are for people who just want other people to tell them that they're taking a shortcut. Like we know we don't really need to be in writers groups. I think we know when we're phoning it in. And sometimes we just want a coach, we want someone to be like, a personal trainer, to be like, come on, do these squats, even though you know how to do 40 squats. Sometimes you just want someone there to cheer you on. But I'll take notes from kids for sure. If kids are bored at any point, it's a huge red flag. Yeah.
Is it fair to say a good idea is just a good idea, or is there, what I'm trying to get at is I'm wondering if, what the parameters are that make a good kid's book. I know you can say the adult is invested and interested as well. I think that's a foundational answer. And what I like about your books is I don't think there's necessarily this very clear, specific moral I'm supposed to take for them. I find a lot of kids' books are too one-to-one in expressing this is how you should behave, or this is right, this is wrong. So all good art, it's more divergent than just telling you what to think. Yeah. I always think of the wolf in Pokko, how he eats someone and is quickly forgiven and things just move on. Yeah.
Well, in terms of picture books as a moral vehicle, these are lessons moral lessons for kids. I think that's such a wild, a naive assumption. When I definitely had pushback from some editors, because Pokko is published in different languages. And so some editors were like, where's the justice in this book? It's excuse me, but get out of here. Where is is literature, is that art? Do we expect justice in literature? This isn't, it's ridiculous. So, and also I'm not, I'm not qualified to lecture anyone on justice. I'm a flawed, shitty person. I'm not I'm not a pastor, I'm not a moral, and I don't think any picture book artists are. So there's this weird hat that you see people put on when they write picture books, where they become like these weird moral givers and like light soothsayers about life. And it's just, I find it very, I find it very put upon, very like, it feels a little fake. Anyway, I'm not interested in that at all. The moral aspect of it. Yeah. And like that what definitely came up with Pokko. And then in terms
because of the wolf specifically?
Yeah, the wolf was one thing. And then like the parents kind of get kidnapped at the end. They were like, can we,
sure.
But it just felt right at that moment.
That's completely, that's what I hope to hear from artists, so that's refreshing, because I think in some ways children are viewed as these blank slates that parents feel this increasing pressure to, dictate very clear morals to.
Yeah.
And I understand why they believe that, but I think it makes for a really shitty book, and I see it all the time in kids' books. And so I think that's what I picked up in the work immediately. Like, oh, this isn't, I mean, I guess it's patronizing in some ways to just tell me what I think my kid should believe, etc., or the child. And all the best kids' books I can remember definitely don't have moral lessons. And fairy tales, although they do have moral lessons, are very complex in their symbolic structure. So you don't even know that this is occurring.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't think. Anyway, it's just as like you make comics, so like it's as silly as asking like, how come does Dan Clowes make like what are the morals of his? It's literature. It's like, and I think kids are capable of reading literature and art, and also if it opens discussions, then cool.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I noticed with Mina and Pokko, I'm wondering if this is intentional, is that in Pokko, the child is super extroverted and bringing the world into the house. And in Mina, the child is introverted and her father is bringing all this chaos and world into her space.
Interesting. I didn't plan that or think about it, but yeah. I did think about like Mina. I was like, oh, it'd be nice to have like, the hero of a story be an introvert.
Yeah.
And I did think, and that mimics my relationship with my dad more. My dad was way more extroverted than me, and I'm more introverted. And it was like, that felt like a more autobiographical. Yeah.
I've only read those two books, admittedly.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming
those are the only two I've made.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've illustrated a bunch, but those are the only two I've written. So
you're really enjoying that process?
Yeah, I love it. I think for a long time I was painting and loving like pushing the boundaries of my own abilities as a painter, and trying to find different ways to express myself visually. But now I feel like I'm trying to do that with the writing. Like I'm very happy with how I express things visually, with my art. But like I'm trying to write. I'm trying to push my writing, and really, it's very difficult. It's very challenging. It feels like where I was 10 years ago with painting, I think.
Right. So you have your visual language sorted out. You don't feel the need to alter it at this point.
Yeah, I have fun and I know how to express what I need.
How long did that take?
It took a long time. I didn't go to art school, so did a lot of like studying and experimenting and trying to learn from my peers and my friends, and probably took 15 years to become able to make a painting I was happy with.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
It's wild. Yeah, it takes a long time to be good at anything, I think. And I'm not saying I'm like great or anything. I just I feel like I can get what I need. I can say what I need to say. I can speak in sentences with color. No,
they're very pleasant images, and I think the beauty of kids' books is you're being kept in check by the child who's really visually oriented and emotionally oriented, and by the adult who needs stimulation beyond that, I think, often. And so it's a pretty complete audience.
Yeah. Do you have kids?
I have a stepdaughter, and I will likely make my own children soon. and for me, I think I'm like very ground up. So I think I'm already thinking about making kids books, or books that, I doubt I'm going to make like kids books and be successful in the way you are, but make books for children. And for me, it's just like, it's interesting to be around a kid all the time. It's a big change. And that got me interested in it. Yeah.
Well, me
simple.
too. That's how I got into this. About 20 years ago, I was teaching kindergarten in Korea, and I would read amazing Korean picture books to these kids every week, and I would just fell in love with these like Korean picture books, which are very expressivistic, artistically expressionistic, artistically, and I was just like, wow, you can like do these beautiful paintings and tell these stories, and then these kids, my students, would start making up stories and telling them to me. And I was like, well, teaching is exhausting. I was working long hours teaching, and I was like, this is so exhausting. I'm not cut out for it, but I would love to get good at making picture books. And it was super inspiring, I think, in the same way. When you sit with kids and talk to them, it's like a whole beautiful way of seeing the world.
It can be, yes. I think.
Yeah, it can be. It's over romanticizing.
Yeah, I certainly stray from that in some ways. I don't believe them to be that innocent either. But that's what makes them interesting. I think the flattening of how people see children is a problem, and that's why they make these books in these really flat ways, or cartoons are a mess, in my opinion. Just deeply uninteresting.
You mean like animated stuff is a mess?
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm just a curmudgeon, but I think that's what I see the problem as, is there's this lack of respect for the child's sophistication. I see the same thing with book cover design. I saw in your Q&A that, I don't know how to pronounce his name, honestly, but one of your favorite designers is Peter Mendelssohn. Yeah. And I feel like he and Chip Kidd expect a little something from their viewer. Expect a little work, and that's a form of respect, I believe, in art making. Yeah.
Well, I think that's, not to get to, but I think that's the definition of art, where you leave room for the viewer, and you leave room for the viewer's interpretation, or and not to sort of, if you fill that gap, it's no longer art. It's, I don't know, it's like communication,
Sure.
If you're telling them what the message is, there's no room for, them to project themselves onto the thing. That, and that's a big thing with picture books too, is leaving room. People feel the need with all audiences to talk too much and say too much and over explain. And like one thing, like one red flag when someone sends me a script to illustrate is if the script is just too long. Like, I can tell before I even read it if I'm going to paint it. Like, if it's more than 1 or 2 pages, it's too long, and there's no room for the illustrations. It's someone who's fallen in love with their writing, and maybe they should go do something with prose. But to do something with a picture book, the pictures have to, I think the pictures have to contribute, and then not only do the pictures have to contribute, but the reader has to contribute. So that's, there has to be all sorts of room left in the writing. You need to leave lots of room, and we're not in a, people are just, I think people have always been excited to over explain things, like I'm doing today.
I understand what you mean. Mm-hmm. I think it's accurate. I think when you're a young artist, you try to cram a lot of ideas, overly complex ideas, especially if you're intellectual, into your drawings, and it's not what it's for, in my opinion. Visual art is not primarily there for intellectual stimulation. It's there for visual and symbolic stimulation, at least how I see it. Mm-hmm. And so I think when your self-esteem is embedded in one practice, it's logical that you try to put all those eggs in that basket and get it out. But I think as you mature, you develop simplicity because it's not about you, it's about the craft and the audience.
Yeah, I think about like the first phase of my like illustration career, and I was always so concerned with like, well, I don't know how to draw hands, or I don't know how to draw, this thing or that thing. Mm-hmm. But now, like, that's just not a thing anymore, because we had this thing on Adventure Time, this show I worked on, where like the more naively you draw something, the more truthful it is. I remember we would draw these awful cows, and they don't look like anything like cows. They're just a bunch of like shapes stuck together. But I remember Adamuto, the showrunner, saying, "Oh, it's a cow because we say it's a cow," And it's like it's a bicycle because you say it's a bicycle, and let the reader like meet you there. It's really, or the viewer meet you there. It's really, I think that's the most exciting way to work.
Yeah, I think also part of this problem is when you're young, you want to have clear metrics for advancing, technically speaking. So you want to be able to draw the cow as clearly as you can draw the cow.
Right.
Because that's actually a pretty tricky thing, understanding.
Yeah.
There's like artists, I think, who embrace being naive, especially if they went to school too much. And you're like, well, aren't you trying to refine some technical skill here? Because I think that matters as well. Yeah. And your work definitely has a very beautiful balance of those two things, I believe.
Thank you. Yeah, the old adage is, you learn something deeply and then let go of it, and then just, like study the cow, drawing all day, and then don't use a cow for reference. Just draw from your heart or your mind. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or memory. And then that's your way of drawing a cow. Like that's anytime I need to, learn how to draw something, I'll just do that. It's kind of like however AI learns something, you just like study a bunch of things and then let yourself regurgitate it.
Well, in a more graceful way than AI. I feel like AI is just like an assemblage of disparate sources. Right. I like to think humans are doing something that it can't do. But we shall see.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's dangerous for us to for us to look at it in terms of what AI can and can't do, because the whole nature of it is like iterative, and it's going to keep getting better, and it will be able to do everything we can. It will be able to, draw hands very soon, and that's, so we can't have any. I just think like the thing that I'm looking for is I just want to feel people's human experience, and their own personal experience, not. It's such a weird vacuum world, the idea of like having robots make things for us. I mean, that's why I try to do everything like hand painted. I at some point I realized like sitting in front of a Cintiq for your whole painting is really narrowing, and it can really like it's like moving away from the human experience, I think, for me anyway. And so it wasn't satisfying for me in a way that was useful.
I mean, I think it's objectively true, and I think you can see it in the tendency of. I always found it odd, if you work digitally, you have to kind of roughen things up and try to bring it back into something that doesn't feel so polished, right? For it to feel warm. Yeah. And then when you're working in real life, at least when I would make books, I'd be doing the opposite, where I'm trying to reach some kind of purity and cleanliness, and getting frustrated with smudging this or that thing. It's very odd. But I relate to that. I mean, I think it's you probably started picking up the Cintiq by working on cartoons, right? Because it's a collective process that needs to be efficient.
Yeah. Deadlines are crazy.
Like illustration pushed me towards digital work, and I feel a lot of things about that. I mean, I try to be grateful for the strength of each process, because I think you can kind of learn some sensibilities on a more, what would you say, inexpensive way. Like you can learn your color sensibilities without buying all this paint. And there's something great about that too.
Yeah.
So would all these illustrations for Mina and Pokko they're just actual paintings?
Yeah, they're all paintings. Yeah. There's a box of Pokko paintings and a box of Mina paintings somewhere. Yeah. Yeah. And like, the more I work like that, the more I want to really, like, obviously I scan them and, I format them and touch them up a bit. And the more I work like that, the more I want to really get 100% of it in the actual painting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see them as characters in the same world?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And so is that where you're working up? You're building that world out with different characters?
Sort of. I'm trying to work on the third book right now, but it's not flowing. So I'm just kind of also being open to just writing a book. So, yeah, I do like that world, but also don't want to, I don't know. It's tough to know where to constrain yourself and where to just let go,
It's true. Yeah. I think the only way to know is to know your aim, and then you can kind of get a sense of it.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think your aim is in that sense, in totality? Like, how old are you?
I'm 46.
And do you feel that you've found something that is like, does it happen? I think everyone's life develops differently, but do you think that all the previous jobs, et cetera, they kind of have been distilled down into this pursuit of the kids' book, the picture book?
Yeah, I do kind of, I don't know if it makes that much sense, but I do think like everything is in the stew, everything I've done, even office jobs that I did that had nothing to do with art, even my politics degree that had nothing to do with art, it all found its way into, I think, really helping me like find a process and a place in, my work. In terms of like what my aim is, I'm also careful not to be that, like, I think there's a conceit there that's like, or an arrogance, that I'm like, I'm trying to do a thing. Like, I think I have to like, we change every year. So what we're working on is going to change too. And how we want to express ourselves is going to change. Like, I couldn't have made these picture books 10 years ago, and I just didn't know the things I know now. And, I think in 5 years, I have to be open to a different set of skills I might have, or a different set of, different language I might have. So I don't know, in terms of aim, like I do think like all art is about communicating emotion. And I think like, that's my fundamental aim, is just, finding community and communicating emotion through the work. And it's so gratifying when it hits, when you or someone else is like, this book resonated in some way. That's really amazing. The books have been published in a bunch of different languages now, and it's really, really gratifying, to see like people interpret it and assimilate it into their own lives.
Yeah, I'm trying to process this idea. For me, art is in the service of the transcendent, the best art. So I'm trying to process this idea of what you just said about emotion as its main goal.
Yeah. Well, for me, everyone has has a different way of like looking at things, but
can you clarify or elaborate on that a little bit more? I'm curious. In what sense?
If you look at a great painting, it makes you feel a certain way, and it maybe it stirs a memory or a feeling or a scent or something in your life. And that's, for me, if I'm in a museum or any setting and something like stirs me, that's the most I can hope for, or a film, or it's like stirring in some way. And what does it stir? It stirs like an emotional, recollection, or some kind of emotional feeling. And I think that's the most one can hope for. And I think that's what people get out of, I think sometimes that's what people get out of my books. I don't know. I don't want to be too like haughty about it, but yeah, I do think like, and so, that's the difference between like, yeah, I could pump out books about, nothing, I think sometimes people, in the industry would like it if I did that. If I just pumped out books that were like, about, I don't know, whatever, mushrooms or something. But I want it to be deeper. I want it to like have legs. I want people to be able to revisit it and find different, meaning in it, because that's what's important to me when I'm reading anything.
How long? I don't know if this is a standardized process, so this might vary, but how long would you say it takes you from start to finish to make one of these books, or to make Mina and Pokko? Yeah,
I think it's like those books took about 8 months each, maybe like longer. There's a lot of fine tuning in the details in the pre-press and stuff, but it took a long time, like I think like someone who's on the like assembly line of picture books could pump out 2 books a year or something. And then for me, I think like after Mina, like I needed a year to do something different. I worked on a couple animated projects. You know what I mean? So then you're like, okay, now I'm ready to go back to books. It's been a year. It takes another year to make the book. It's like 2 or 3 years goes by before another book comes out. But yeah, I would love to, I'd love to have more of a standardized approach. But yeah, right now it's about 8 months and I have to really be in it.
And so does that mean you wake up, you work on that book, and that's where all your energy is going?
Yeah, for sure. Like when I'm painting, for sure, I'm doing every day. I'm like working on the book, and it's like a page, trying to do a full page every day. It never happens, of course. Like you end up doing 1 or 2 pages a week. And then if these are quite long books, right? They're 30 or 40 pages. So that's going to take, what's that going to take? 4 months or something just to paint. And then there's like post-production, and I always like revise tons of paintings. So there's a bunch of paintings that didn't make the cut because I'm constantly editing and moving things around. Yeah, and the writing's always moving around. So the whole thing's probably about, it is full-time, and you do have to take it seriously. It's not like, this idea people have about artists' lives, like where you just like work 1 day a week. No, I'm quite disciplined in the studio.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one in a while. But I think before I went to college, I think that's how I, that and they think they're just, completely unorganized, like insane. Yeah. And somehow pumping out work. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of funny. Yeah. So that's interesting. So you're just on that. So I assume financially, it's a sustainable path, these kids' books. Yeah, I mean, I do other projects. Like I say, I usually bounce back and forth. Like I'll do an animated project, and then I'll do a picture book, and then maybe I'll illustrate a book for someone, do an animated project, make my own book. Yeah, it's quite sustainable. I'm quite grateful and lucky, I think. Totally. I mean, it looks like a beautiful life in some ways. I see, Adventure Time was an important show, straight up. Brought together a lot of great artists. I'm in LA now, and it's nice. I still see friends that I worked on that show with, and it's really those guys were like, and women, but the people on that show were like super instrumental, and I learned so much from working on the show. Yeah. I can feel that a little bit. Just a little bit in Mina and Pokko, just their environments, something about it. I don't know what it is. But I think that was like an explosion of a certain language came out of that show, or honestly, it was like a collecting of a certain language and then a refining of it, especially within the comics community. Right.
Yeah, it felt like, everyone has different interpretations, but it felt like there was this wave of manga that was really hitting. If you go back to early 2000s, like this wave of manga and anime that was hitting, that it's about emotionality. Like it's not about things being on model or rational. It's like about how does the character feel. And I think like you get a lot of that in Adventure Time. Like Finn would break model all the time or be drawn, and they were always on. They always ask the animators to go on the storyboard. They don't care about the models as much because, it's about the emotionality of the writer and the storyboarder, and it's not about, the sort of like the rationality, which I think was a previous way of looking at things. And even now, like Western art directors and editors are so focused on like things being on model, colors being like local colors that are the same. And it's like such a boring way to look at the world. Like art is a giant metaphor and it can be anything. And kids especially are very capable of interpreting. You could draw an apple any color you want, and you could draw a fin any way you want, and kids and viewers or readers will know exactly what you're trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
And
what does it
now,
mean?
Oh, go ahead.
What does it mean to be on model? Does that mean like there's specific ways to draw this character?
Yeah, there's repeated? In animated TV, there's always a design model that's built, and it's very precise proportions and very precise elements to the character. Maybe there's a button here, maybe the eyes are, set in a certain way with respect to the mouth. So that's, these proportions are like in traditional animation, Disney animation, these things are like religious, like they're strict. But, a lot of like manga and like anime, like that, I think there was room for these things to push and pull. If you look at like the work of like Yuasa Masaki or something, like you could push, you see Mind Game or something, like it's more about just the flexibility of the medium. And it celebrates what it's good about animation, which is like, it can be anything at any time. It's like a dream language, It's actually what I like about Brecht Evans' work with respect to just characters changing all the time. Yeah. I'm curious if you've read Panther by Brecht Evans, because I find it such a strange project in some ways. Yeah, I don't think I've read it, but I've definitely seen it, and like, it's and that's a great example. Like, who the Panther is, who the girl is, like they change constantly. Like all of these visual storytelling media are dream languages, and it's like that amazing thing about dreams when you're like, I had this dream about my sister, but actually it was my doctor, but I know it was my sister. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you're like, what was that? Or, it's like when you have a dream about someone, but they're I had a dream about a coffee mug, but really it was my sister. Like that's the power of visual. Is the coffee mug can be your doctor. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be a coffee mug. And so the tyranny of like the design model, I think is it's nice that that's over, and people like Brecht Evans are like, a lot of European artists, are also breaking that. It's great. That's a worldwide calcification, I would say. Like, it's because these things transcend the categorical desire to say this is this thing, this fact. Seeking part of our mind, and even it transcends the political, where it's like, well, it doesn't represent a political perspective per se. It could actually represent two opposing views at the exact same time, which is deeply frightening to some people, I think, because it challenges ideologies and dogma when you've somehow housed them in the same story or individual within the story. Yeah. For painting too, that was a huge breakthrough for me. That was a huge, when I realized it doesn't matter what the color is. It's what does the color feel like? Does that feel, and that's all that matters. It's not, like that flower should be violet colored. Like that's not, if you think like that, everything will have a rigidity that does not work with paint. You need to like let go of any idea of what it is and just feel what the color is. And then it was like, oh, now I get it, and it was like really liberating for me. But it works on all levels. I think this stuff works, from a design perspective, from a color painting perspective, and from a writing perspective too, character perspective. Well, because life is it's as surreal as that thing itself, that decision, that
you know, it isn't clear why apples grow from an apple tree. It's
Right,
a very tremendously strange concept.
right.
And then you can explain to me the scientific way it does that, and it's all rather boring to me personally. But it doesn't explain why the whole thing even exists or would create such a strange fruit that you can then eat. And I think once the artist can embrace how life was actually made in some sense, then they break through from that weird, we call it categorical desire to just kind of prove that you know about this or that thing in an accurate manner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you're saying you're stuck on this next book a little bit. It's not flowing a little.
Well, nothing flowed. Like, it's wild. I just went back and recently looked at my writing for Pokko, and I did so many versions, and it didn't flow. Even when the book was done, I was like, this is terrible. Like, I don't think this came out the way I needed it to. It was never a flow state. Writing is very difficult. Writing for me is very difficult. And I think if you dig, like, it's very difficult for everyone. And I think that's completely normal. Like, you kind of have to embrace that it's like a digging process, but it's about doing the work. And I just need to do the work, and I'll get there with this. But,
was there a difference in your response to Mina versus Pokko? Were you more comfortable making Mina? Did you like it more when you were done? Do you like it more now? Do you like Pokko more that it's out into the world?
Oh, interesting. Well, yeah, like, first of all, Pokko was my first book, and no one knew how to take it. I think when it first came out, including my publishers and my agent, I think everyone was like, hey, I don't know where this is going to sit. Like, I don't know if anyone's going to find a place for this. But it was really well received. Oh, it was kind of a sleeper. Like, it's still getting, people are still finding it, which is really nice. But I had enough positive feedback from Pokko that I was like, okay, the risks that I was taking with Pokko have been, applauded by people who I respect. So I felt much more confident, going for it with Mina. I felt much more confident with the whole process. Everything's like a different project, and Mina was made during the pandemic. I was in a really weird place. So like, it's kind of nice to have that document from that time. But yeah,
it's hard for me to imagine the not negative, but the critical feedback before this is being published, because to me, it's just a beautiful looking book. I'm curious what a publisher was hesitant about the book.
Well, it's not just my publisher. My publisher is actually super supportive. The scene with the rabbit and the parents, and it's a long book. It's also 70 something pages. Mm-hmm. I had the foreign rights agent saying no one's going to buy this abroad. But then Pokko started winning all these awards, and it started getting picked up everywhere abroad. But yeah, there was all sorts of reticence. People were just like, this book is too long. It's 75 pages. Picture books are supposed to be something else. And people were like, like the issue with what's the moral message? It's too dark, it's easy for us to say, it's not that dark. It's a picture book, but you really, like, if you really look at the picture book landscape, it's really about, teacups and flowers and unicorns. It's not. There's not really a big space for this kind of book, but people have found a place for it, and that's really gratifying.
Yeah, it's really interesting for you to mention all that. I think when I saw it, because I'm not used to reading that many kids' books, I didn't see it as breaking these unwritten rules at all. Probably the last book I bought for a kid was Matt Fury's kids book, but that doesn't really feel that much like a kids book in the least. Right. And so, I had no idea that those were.
Yeah, I mean, it's different worlds. I think it depends on what. Yeah, if you're coming from comics or you're coming from film, of course, it doesn't feel like challenging. Like, also, people are like, look at Roald Dahl. Like, that stuff is so... Roald Dahl would never get published today. Like, let's be clear. He would never get published today. Like, Tommy Ungerer would never get published today. Like, that
really?
stuff... Yeah, that stuff is... That's
sad.
It has a place in the pantheon because of time, because of history. But most of those books would not make it past editorial muster. We're in a much more puritanical landscape right now.
Sure.
So I think there are things about both books. I mean, you can read whatever you can read. I don't read them, but you can probably read reviews online that both books sort of upset people in different ways.
I could assume
that's fine.
Reading Mina, because I'll put those glasses on, those goggles on for fun. I don't live with those goggles, thank God. But the lack of the mom, I found very interesting in Mina. Oh,
that's not a thing I've ever heard, and that's not even a thing I think anyone's mentioned.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I assumed when you the kid typically, normally would have a mom and a dad. So I assume like kids' books, that's kind of the foundational start. Just like Pokko has a mom and the dad, and they make the mistake in the beginning. And so, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, there's just this one kid and this dude who's kind of just inviting chaos into this household and doesn't know how to identify things.
Yeah.
But there's so many Disney films with that. There's often a missing parent on both sides, or one dies, and that creates an interesting tension, I think, for the characters. I always loved that idea that like the cats didn't start behaving like cats until they identified them as such.
Right.
It's probably my favorite part of the book in some way.
Yeah, there's that like Dr. DeSoto moment where the doctor is like, this is trouble. But the parent thing was like, I do think like that's another thing if you are immersed in the picture book world. Mm-hmm. And that's a big thing I do when I'm researching a book or writing a book, is I'll go and read, 50 picture books. Because you really like get into the world of what, the landscape of what, what we're dealing with, the medium. And there's this thing about perfect parents, like that. Yeah. All the parents are fucking perfect and boring, and it's like so unrealistic. And I'm like, how toxic is that for kids who don't grow up in a perfect, household, to just see that over and over again? That they probably think like, maybe they think like it's their fault that their parents are not perfect, and it's like it was less about there not being a mom. Just wanted to have imperfect parents. I wanted to have like, and often I wanted to have a child who had to parent their parents, which is also a common thing. And
I have a lot of complex feelings about the relationship of the daughter to the father. Because I think he's not given enough credit in some ways. Like I don't even know if he's naive or almost like transcendently accepting of things, and his acceptance creates this like hallucinogenic world of peace. That's and like maybe he's always right because he's always kind of open. But I like that. There's this kind of boring Pixar move that they keep making, and I'm tired of, where it's like parents just don't understand, basically in a
right.
It's like,
but they're always doing their best. Right?
Yeah.
And that's the shit I don't like. Like sometimes people aren't doing their best. Like like this truism in society where it's like, oh, but they're trying their best, and it's like sometimes they're really not. Or we talk a little bit about how these all come from an emotional place. Like the emotion for me and Mina was, are you ever in a car with someone else who's driving and they're driving too fast? Or like there's a blizzard and it seems like they're not aware that the roads are icy and like, but I grew up like that because I grew up in Canada, and there's always someone driving way too fast in a snowy road, on an icy road, and I was just like, this is so dangerous. Like one mistake, and we could be devoured by this, highway. But we would always get to the place, and it was always like, maybe am I wrong for being anxious about this? Like maybe life is better if we're just relaxed about the snowy highway. And that's the emotion behind Mina is like, she's in this car with her dad and she's like, is he, it's just a question. It's not an answer. It's not, I don't have a lesson to give, but it's just that question of like, is he driving too fast? Is he being reckless or does she need to just relax and go with the flow? Like maybe they are squirrels. I don't know. Like you said.
Right. Oh, I had something. I just lost it. Oh, yeah. So like when you read these books preemptively, like you said, you mentioned you might pull a pile of 50 kids' books. Who are you reading? Is it Tom Younger and Roald Dahl and
everything? I want to read stuff that's like that resonates with, doesn't resonate with me. I want to read everything. I'm reading, yeah, for sure. I'm picking, the classics, but I want to read the stuff that's in the top 10 list, like what people are writing, like what's resonating with the market. I do think like it's our job as artists. Like I'm a working artist. I need to like make a living, and it's not my job to like serve the market solely. But I do think if there are things I want to make as an artist that are, that do overlap with the market, with what the market wants, then I will aim for that. If I could pick 3 different projects and one of them is more in line with the market, then sure, I'll go for that because I have to pay rent.
But you're also saying the lack thereof within the market.
What's that?
Is that correct? Like you're also saying if you notice a lack in the market and you have a book that fills it.
Yeah. I'm not trying to like, There's things the market wants that it doesn't know it wants, Yeah. Like I think Pokko was kind of maybe a little bit like that. Like it was a little bit like, I think I was really craving something funny and dark, a little funnier and darker than what was on shelves. And I think other people were too, but, that's the old, like, classic thing about just make what you want and other people will also want it.
Sometimes it's true. Yep.
If you really are delighted by something, other people will. If you're really like thoroughly delighted by something, I'm sure other people will also. But like I think that goes to being able to like hear ourselves again, which is the truest role I think of an artist, if we don't mind this philosophical discussion. But it's the role of an artist to really hear ourselves, like those kids in my kindergarten class, like they can hear themselves so clearly. And you look at their work and it's so full of style and energy and individuality. But what happens is we're so shaped by society and we're so shaped by what we think we need to do to become successful or to make money, that those things invade our work and they kind of poison our work. But if we really can hear what we're delighted by, if we can hear it really loud and clear, you end up with like David Lynch, or something like magical,
Is there a children's book publisher that you think is hitting the mark more often than not?
Well, I don't know. I think like there's so many different, like I think there's different marks, you're saying hitting the mark. Like, I think there are many different marks. There's so many like artful books. And then there's so many books that are like good stories. But I think publishing is a very difficult industry. And I think they're all under a lot of pressure. They have to deliver a lot of stuff on a regular basis to keep the machine moving, Yeah. And even as big as publishing is, it's a tiny, it's tiny compared to other sectors. So I don't know. I kind of forgive. I think they have to pump out a lot of stuff, and I think it's forgivable. But I think there's publishers like Enchanted Lion, that are making amazing stuff. There's publishers in like Germany, like Rotopol. My publisher in Germany, Rotopol. I love everything they do. Yeah, I mean, I think, Candlewick is they make really nice books. But when you look through the ages, there's like Knopf for like, these classic publishers. Yeah.
No, that's good to hear. I didn't know about any of those publishers. I know about Nobrow's. I think Nobrow has a kids book division, right?
It's called Flying Eye. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it looks like, I'm looking through these websites. I feel like it's out there. The quality is out there. There's probably just, like you said, there's a ton of books saturated.
They all have to make a lot of stuff, and that's good because, we don't always know what's going to work, and it's good that they're constantly. I do think in the West there's a bit more of an orthodoxy. Like I said, it's a bit more puritanical, and I do think it's created a sort of a flattening effect in the industry. It's kind of a lot of, I think it's a lot of like stuff without edges, but but there's people challenging it all the time. Maybe it's because I'm in the middle of it and I'm reading a lot of these books that it feels like it's not a lot, but there is actually a lot of great stuff going on. Japanese author Akiko Miyakashi makes amazing books. I think she's a great example of someone who's really just trying to like communicate an emotion and just one thing, just like one emotion. She has this book called The Storm, and it's just like that feeling you had when you were a kid, like when you saw a storm coming in, and then like just that feeling of this big ominous biblical clouds coming in, and then like how it changes your world for a day, and then everything goes back to the way it was before. It's really like specific and kind of beautiful.
I'll have to check that out.
Mm-hmm. She has a book also called Walk Home at Night, which is just like, it's just a rabbit carrying her baby rabbit, and they're walking home through town and looking in the windows at everyone getting ready for bed in their different ways. And it also like, it harkens that feeling we had when our parents would carry us, and also that moment of just like how we all in the world have different specific rituals before we go to sleep. It's just, different smells. You can almost like smell the different homes and stuff. It's really, really wonderful. And like, she was a huge inspiration for Pokko because she was like seeing that she would be like, just one thing. Just focus on one thing. You don't need to like say 5 things.
Right.
Focus on one thing and cut everything else.
This question might be trite, but what do you think the function is of anthropomorphizing characters? Like why not make it a world of humans? Why make it a world of animals who behave in human ways?
I think it's projection. We can transfer and project ourselves onto these blank canvases better and more easily than if it's a white boy or or a girl in a wheelchair. It's maybe like it's more difficult to project our own experience onto that.
Right.
But you say that, but like the people like Ezra Keats like do books like The Snowy Day where everyone can project themselves onto that character. It's like such one specific emotional moment. And yeah, I mean, some people can do it stunningly. I just like, it's like a blank canvas that people can, or a blank screen that people can throw their projector onto.
Well, do you think it's blank in the sense of, I know what you mean, that you can enter into it more easily.
Yeah.
But also, don't you think there's some kind of base mythology to each creature, and somehow almost like picking a color, there, even if it's not like very well thought out or something, like you get a sense of why this character should be a mouse, a frog, a cat is a cat.
I don't think so. I didn't think about that at all. I don't think I think in the same way that every time you meet a Matthew you don't take every Matthew. It's just a new Matthew that you met. You don't. You're not like, oh, I know another Matthew. You're just like them.
Right.
You know, even though you're right. Obviously, these animals have deep archetypal like histories in human storytelling. I don't think. Like, I think Mina could have been a cat. You know, and we would just project anything onto that cat because you know, if you have cats, you know, they have just as many different types of personalities as humans, you know. I don't think too much about that. I know there's a sense of like, oh, you know, Aesop's fables and, you know, a fox is a fox and it means all these things, but that, I don't know, it doesn't feel useful for me.
That's interesting to hear. I mean, I suppose it could be formally arrived at as well. It's just the shapes start to come together and make a particular creature, and then you want variety of shapes. You know, Pokko would be pretty boring if it was a bunch of humans in the woods playing instruments.
Right.
And yeah, go ahead.
It's like all storytelling. If you see a character make a few decisions, then you start to understand who they are. You know, to see them make choices and make decisions.
Yeah.
It will very quickly. It's just like if you make a new friend, you know, and you go out with them and you see them make 3 choices in an evening, any preconception you might have of them is now gone, and they're now, you know, the sum of these decisions they've made.
Right. And you said sometimes you do illustrate other people's scripts, books. Or is that not correct?
Yeah, I do. I've done a few books with writers. Yeah.
Does that move faster for you, or is that more frustrating? What's that experience like as opposed to doing your own thing? Well,
it does move faster in the sense that I'm not as weighed down by the sort of, you know, the meaning of the writing and the editing of the writing. But I think historically, like I did a few books. And it took a long time, I think, because I was also working out how to make books. I purposely did that. I was like, I want to make 3 or 4 books I made, you know, a book with Daniel Handler, Lemony Snicket, and Kirsten Hall and Kate Messner. I made these books with them, and that was really me figuring out how to make books, like doing thumbnails and the whole process. But now I do think the next books that I am illustrating, I think will go much quicker because I do have a process now, you know. I do have a sort of like way of working, and I think it can be quite efficient when I'm rolling.
And do you find that the seeds for these books are they a sentence? Are they visual? Are they a dream? Like for instance, Miyazaki he'll start the film from one image that just grabs him, you know, without a script.
Yeah.
Do you find that there is some kind of seed that clearly reemerges for you, like a process that?
Yeah. Well, Pokko was one image. It was just this frog and this drum, and it was like I had to ask myself, who is this character, and what's the relationship? What's the energy between the frog and the drum? Mm-hmm. But one, I think, important thing I've learned along the way is that a story is 2 things. You know, if I had just had a frog and no drum, that's not a story. That's just a frog. But a story is the energy between 2 things. So like a puppet is not a story, but a puppet with a father is Pinocchio. That's right. A story, you know, and like, or a puppet with a father is whatever you want that energy between those 2 things to be. And that's actually a concept espoused by this guy, Gianni Rodari, who's like this Italian fairy tale theorist. And I kind of learned it the long way around making Pokko and Mina. But then when I was reading The Grammar of Fantasy, this book by Gianni Rodari, he articulates it. He says, you know, a story is 2 things, and he calls it the fantastic binomial. So it's the energy between those 2 things that, you know, you can really develop a story out of. Yeah, and I mean, Miyazaki is much more poetic than anyone else, but
did Mina have an image that was like that?
Yeah, it was like this. That was confusing for me because it started as this, oh, what if a family of mice gets a pet cat. And I was like, because I was like, oh, the energy, what are the classic, I wanted to play with like really classic raw, archetypal energies. And I was like, well, cat and mouse are the two most, fundamental energies I could play with. But then as I wrote it and I was reworking, the drafts, I realized it wasn't about the cat and the mouse. It was about mouse and her father. And those were the two energies. And so I started doing drawings of Mina and her father and, what they would look like together. She would be reading and he would be building. He would be doing something physical and she would be doing something intellectual. And then it was like, oh, this reminds me of Zorba the Greek, which is this classic novel about the Apollonian and the Dionysian, like the body and the mind. And I was like, oh, this book is kind of about the body and the mind. So, I mean, that's what I mean about layers. And I hope people feel that. Like there's layers working in Mina where it's like, it works on hopefully it works on a surface, just a fun story layer, but it also works on like, like, would I rather read a book or go dancing tonight layer, and that's what that book is about.
Oh, I definitely feel that depth in Mina more than Pokko for me. Maybe because it might be because, well, I don't even know what the hell I am. I don't know if I'm an introvert or an extrovert. I just feel like that dynamic of like the quote unquote enemy coming into your home and his inability to identify that. I don't know. There's some very interesting things about that book to me that I just read it today. So maybe I'm just, in the honeymoon phase there. But I feel like there's something for me, at least personally, where there's a lot I can take from that. Do you have a preference of the two books, or do you just accept them as they are?
I like them both as they are. I do think like when I'm doing a reading, I think Pokko is more gratifying for, people in a, audience setting.
Yeah.
I think it has a couple more surprises. I think people need more time to process how they feel about the father-daughter relationship, and like everyone has different, like everyone really projects themselves onto those two characters, and everyone has really like different takes on it, and that's fine. I have no judgment on that, but I think it creates a more pensive mood in a crowd atmosphere. So if I'm ever like asked to do a reading, I'll read Pokko. It's just more, I think it's a better read aloud sort of thing. But I think they're both, I love them both in different ways.
That's great. Did you have that relationship to your work when you were younger? The ability to actually just love your work? No. I mean, I went through a long period of like self, like questioning and loathing and like, but I think like, no, I do really like my work. And I think the reason is because my publisher really let me execute it the way I wanted. You know how, when we want to make something, there's always these like forces that are like, oh, I wanted this book to look like that, but they wanted to do this and they made these changes. My publisher lets me make no compromises, and she lets me take as long as I need to. And so I can't complain, like everything I put out it's exactly who I was, even if like, it's exactly who I was when I made the book, and the other thing is, I know I worked really hard on the books. Like I worked on different layers. And so even if it doesn't land with people, that's fine. I know I did my best. I know I really like searched through the different levels of meaning, and, I tried to have fun with it. And so, I'm very happy with that. And I do think like, same thing with the painting. Like it took a very long time for me to develop this approach to painting, and, between animated work and picture book work, I really have worked very hard on, compositional skills and color theory and like my own beliefs and, system of beliefs. So and I've just chosen not to like
I think my therapist, she always says no negative self-talk, So I've just chosen not to be like self-critical about those things. I think there's many things I'm bad at, but I think I'm pretty good at painting and I'm pretty good at writing.
I'm happy to hear that.
Thanks.
Because I think it's an earned thing, I've never met an artist who didn't go through that process of at least a decade. Maybe self-loathing is a strong word, but of just hypercriticality. And anyone I've ever met who was just like, the first thing they shit out, they were like, this is amazing. Well, they're not going to go very far. So I think it's it's something to celebrate when an artist attains that level of comfort with themselves and their own work. That can take, a decade or two to reach.
I have a good friend, Jesse Jacobs, who's an amazing comic book artist, and we talk all the time. And he talks about how, now that we're 20 years in, to what we do, we know when we have shitty days, when we paint something shitty or we write something shitty, we know that that's part of the process. I'm not saying everything I do is good or I'm great at what I do. I just know that making shit is part of the process. And if I keep working at it, I'll get to a level that I'm happy with. It's like you're saying, oh, this new book is challenging. And it's yeah, every book is challenging. That's part of the process. Sitting with, there's, whenever you're painting something, there's always this, probably about 55% of the way through a painting, it is the ugly phase, and it's that's just the ugly phase of writing. It's the ugly phase of creating, which is wild because I'm working on this project right now. And I'm so comfortable now with the ugly phase. I know that my first 10 drafts of writing are going to be terrible and cringy. And that's just fine. I'm going to get there because, we have taste and experience. But when I'm working for this client and they're they need to see updates every day or every week. And the ugly phase is not something you can show in a PowerPoint presentation, So they're
of course.
Yeah, they're this, what is this? What are we supposed to do with this? And you can tell they're freaking out. And I'm it's going to be great. Relax. It's going to be great. We need to go through this tunnel and then there'll be a beautiful landscape for you to see on the other side. But you need to sit with me and sit with the uncomfortability of this. It's fine,
Oh, yeah.
But it's part of the process. If you want anything to be good, you have to go through this kind of process.
Yeah, there's some neuroses in modern life where maybe it's the speed of life where every single moment has to be correct or pleasurable. Yes. And, looking back on my parents who are still married, I used to have that kind of angsty high school kid thing of oh, why aren't they look at them, they're not happy right now. And it's a kind of it's a ridiculous perspective, when you work on any project that is a lifetime or a decade long or whatever, of course there's going to be, it's maybe majority really difficult. But that's the beautiful thing about it, especially when it churns out a product that is beautiful. I think that contrast is really interesting. The books do look effortless in some ways, which I think should be the goal.
Well, that's nice to hear. That's really nice to hear. Yeah, because they certainly weren't. There are many, many drafts of, especially in Pokko. I went back and, because that was my first book that I wrote, I went back and looked through a bunch of the roughs recently, and it's wild how many different versions of that story there are, and then how many different versions of the pages there are. I really killed myself. I didn't treat this like some rinky-dink project. I really I really did my best.
Is there anywhere to see that? I'd be fascinated to see all those processes.
There's not. I was thinking about 2 months ago, I was thinking about starting a Patreon and talking about that kind of stuff, talking about process stuff and showing different versions of books and, and the decisions we make as we go through these different versions. And I was thinking about doing it, but I don't know. I'm just so busy on this current project that it kind of fell to the side for a bit. But I do think it's interesting, and might be interesting to see or discuss, because there's I do a lot of workshops, like picture book making workshops or design workshops. And a lot of these principles come from, the experience of making these books, where I'm like, maybe it's helpful to other people.
Yeah, I think so. I think what's interesting is you probably never look back and go, oh, I took the wrong fork in the road, because you develop a kind of unconditional relationship to the work in the book that it doesn't forego criticality of the work, but I think there's an intimacy where you really do accept it as it is, as I imagine someone accepts their own child. You don't go back and mull over, well, I could have said this or drawn. I think that can happen. Yeah. But I think the mature response is more, well, this, I did my best, like you said, and this is it. And you kind of let it out into the world. And I'm sure it's very beautiful to see the book translated. For me, just seeing the different covers of a book with different, languages is always really pleasing. I can't imagine if it was one's own book. I've never had that happen. So.
Oh yeah, it's a huge thrill. There's definitely pages in Pokko and Mina and little bits where I'm like, I wish I would have done that differently. But I think it's therapy, but like, I can sit with the knowledge that like, that's where I was at the time. I didn't make that decision for whatever reason, and, I'll learn from it, and that's what it is. But yeah, there's a couple pages in both books where I'm like, oh, I should have done this differently. But for the most part, it's just about self-acceptance, right? It's like, well, that's who I was. I made that decision at that time, and for whatever reason, like, there's no point in like criticizing that person who made that decision. Just learn from it and move on or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm. I will say, I think my favorite, I may take this back, but at least for today, my favorite page is the one in which the stick bug is kind of hidden in the bottom right corner before he reads the story. I just really like, I don't know, I like the subtlety of that. There's something very complete about that page to me.
Right. Oh, thanks.
And I don't, it's funny.
But I personally do like that touch of the stick bug. Like, from the wood.
I think it's funny because I probably wouldn't be able to. I kind of want to go through the book and try to figure out which page bothers you as a fun experiment. But usually I don't think the viewer knows.
I can tell you if you want. In Pokko, there's the page where it's black and white and the parents are being carried off. It's like a watercolor painting.
All right, I'm going to look into that. I don't have it by my side at the moment. But
that page, I remember thinking, because sometimes I do think books are like breathing things. I think you inhale and you exhale as you read, and the book should also inhale and exhale. So I think some pages should be really rich and heavy and like a lot's going on, and then some pages should be really light and, maybe a spot illustration, a lot of negative space. And so being able to where to relax and where to go for it, I think is part of the rhythm of a book for me. And that page, I think I was like, I'm just going to do something like light and black and white. I think I was inspired by Isabel Arsenault, who I was inspired by. And I didn't pull it off at all. She does these black and white pages that are very effortless looking. And so I was like, what if I put in very little effort on this page? And to me, every time I look at it, it's like, oh, you put in very little effort on that page.
I think it's the one that says, until the crowd swept through the house and carried Pokko's parents off to the woods.
Yes.
Yeah, also, interesting. It has a very different feel, actually, now that I'm looking at it. Interesting.
There's a few moments in the book that also have just very different feels, like the whole chase scene with it's just the orange background, and I remember I did those all in like one day. Like you move very quickly through some of the pages, and it's good, but then, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it just looks like you cut corners and we're lazy. And I do remember the other thing I'll say is like it's a 70-page book,
right?
And I was doing paintings, like handmade paintings for every page and redoing them a lot. And I do remember at some point I was just like, I've just got to do this. Like, I've just got to finish this book. I can't give another page like 200% or I'm going to collapse.
Yeah, it's just the reality of making a book, making anything.
Yeah, that's part of the process.
So I assume you're painting right now.
Yeah, I'm painting. I'm working on this corporate project.
A corporate project?
Yeah, it's actually a toy catalog for Amazon.
I don't even know what that means, but it sounds kind of cool. Toy catalog.
It is kind of cool. It's kind of cool. They approached me and asked me if I wanted to write and illustrate this story that weaves through a toy catalog. And when I was a kid, I loved toy catalogs. And I thought this is also an opportunity, this is going to get direct mail to millions of kids around America. And I was like, this is an opportunity to get like a picture book in a home where, they may not even have a picture book. So it's like, this could be really cool. So I've been working on this for the last 6 or 7 months.
Wow.
And it's been really fun. It's been really challenging because it's the first time I've made a book with a team of people standing behind me.
Mm. Right now they're behind you?
They're metaphorically behind me every day. We check in every day and they want to know what I'm doing.
Wow.
Spending their money on me. But it's that's a challenge. It's a team project. That's what I wanted to do. I love working on teams. Sometimes it can be really lonely working on books,
Sure.
So I was really happy to work on a team. And also I'm really excited about, how people bring this into their home. It ended up being a very collaborative project. I didn't get to write the whole thing, but it was a really fun project to work on. And I'm proud of a lot of the paintings.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to seeing that.
Thank you.
Well, I'll let you get back to that. I got to eat dinner.
Where are you? What part of the world are you in?
I live in New Jersey. I was born in New Jersey.
Oh, nice.
And then I lived in California and met a lot of illustrator friends out there, but then I came back eventually. So it is it's 6:30. It's dinner time.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, have a great dinner with your stepdaughter and your partner. And it was really nice talking to you. Thanks for all the thoughtful conversation.
Yeah, it was a great talk. Thanks for your time. Music by Dory Bavarsky and Mingja Chen. Next up, we have fine artist and ceramicist Kevin Umana.
Matthew Forsythe, 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 Matthew Forsythe.